People often say weddings are magical, but my sister Sarah's turned into a nightmare. I was fixing Mia's dress in the bathroom when I heard whispers in the hallway. How could Anna bring that Asian girl? What a disgrace! She's going to ruin all the photos! I held back my tears as I adjusted the pink ribbon in my daughter's hair. My reflection in the mirror felt like a betrayal, too innocent to understand the venom in the voices outside. At that moment, I had no idea that the nasty comments about my adopted daughter would be the least of my worries. In just a few hours, a stylish gray-haired man walked through the church doors, and with him came a truth that would change everything I thought I knew about my own life. Subscribe to the channel and hit like to see more stories like this. Adopting Mia was the best decision of my life. I still remember the day I walked into the Seoul orphanage, nervous and unsure. The social worker took me to a room full of kids playing, but it was Mia who caught my eye. She was all alone in a corner, drawing with complete concentration. When I got closer, she looked up and gave me a stare that melted my heart. The first few months were rough. I barely spoke English and even tried learning a few Korean words on YouTube. We mostly communicated using gestures and smiles. At night, when nightmares woke her up, I'd hold her tight and sing lullabies. Even if I couldn't understand the words she mumbled between sobs, my family never understood my choice. Margaret, my mom, insisted that I should have gotten married first. Sarah often pretended Mia didn't exist, but none of that mattered when my little girl called me Mama for the first time, or when she came home from school running to show me her new drawing. In 3 years, we built our own routine. On Sunday mornings, we made pancakes together, always heart-shaped because Mia said they tasted better that way. Then we'd go to the park, where she taught me some Korean words while playing on the swings. In the evenings, we read stories to each other, creating our very own world of warrior princesses and friendly dragons. I never cared about the sideways looks when we walked hand in hand at the mall, or the awkward questions about your real mother. To me, being a mom has always been about love, not about blood or appearances. Subscribe to the channel and hit like for more stories like this. Sarah's wedding was exactly like her, perfect and superficial. While I was helping Mia with her bridesmaid dress, I noticed the disapproving looks from the aunts. One of them even moved her own daughter when Mia tried to sit next to her during the rehearsal. My blood boiled, but I kept my cool. My daughter didn't deserve to witness any more scenes like that. Margaret, ever proud of her traditional family, spent the entire event trying to explain to the guests that Mia was just my adopted daughter, as if that made her any less my daughter. James, the groom, clearly uncomfortable, avoided looking our way. And of course, Sarah made sure to shove us into the very last spot in the official photo album. During the cocktail hour, I overheard a conversation between Sarah and her best friend. "Thank God you two aren't really blood sisters. Anna was always the ugly duckling of the family," the friend said. Sarah laughed and replied that at least now I had found someone as out of place as I am. Mia was by my side, and for the first time, I realized she understood every single word. Tears welled up in her eyes, but before I could react, Aunt Eleanor slid in with her usual acidic tone. "Anna, dear, don't you think it's time to stop playing the world's savior? That girl needs a real family with a mom and a dad." Mia squeezed my hand tightly. That's when I noticed the sudden silence in the hall. A tall man in an impeccable suit with gray hair had just entered. His gaze met mine immediately, as if he'd known me forever. Margaret dropped her champagne glass, and the sound of shattering glass echoed through the room. "Richard," she whispered, her face draining of all color. The man began walking toward us, his firm steps cutting through the silent chaos. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother, always so controlled, begin to tremble. Sarah stopped dancing with James, frozen in the middle of the hall. Something told me that in that moment, everything was about to change. "Anna," his deep voice filled the hall. "I'm Richard Vernon, your biological father." The world stopped. I felt Mia squeeze my hand even harder, as if she were afraid I might vanish. Margaret stepped forward, but Richard stopped her with a firm gesture. "You don't have that right," Margaret snapped, losing all the composure she once prized. But Richard kept his eyes locked on me. ignoring the rising murmur of the guests. For 35 years, I believed you died along with your mother Isabella during childbirth. His voice caught when he said her name, until I saw your photo in a local magazine featuring single adoptive moms. You look exactly like her. My head was spinning. Richard's words felt like pieces of a puzzle I never knew were missing. Memories started to click. The family album with no baby pictures of me, the inconsistent stories about my birth, the fact that I didn't resemble anyone in the family. Margaret was our nanny, Richard continued, now casting a cold glance at the woman I had always known as my mother. When Isabella died, I fell apart. Margaret took advantage of my vulnerability to convince me that it would be better for you to grow up in a real family like she did. She faked your death certificate and disappeared with you. The hall was completely silent now. Sarah clutched James's arm as if her life depended on it. For the first time, Margaret looked small, defeated. Why now? I finally managed to whisper. Because you deserve to know the truth. Because Isabella deserves that her daughter know how much she loved you, even without having met you. And because he hesitated, glancing at Mia, whose wide eyes took in every word. Because seeing you adopt that girl, giving her the same unconditional love Isabella would have given you, made me realize I can't live with this secret any longer. I felt tears stream down my face, but they weren't tears of sorrow. It was like for the first time ever, I was actually finding myself. The confrontation with Margaret exploded in the house office, away from the prying eyes of the wedding guests. Mia was safe with Richard in the library, getting to know her new grandpa, while I faced the woman who'd spun the biggest lie of my life. How could you? I asked, my hands trembling. All these years, all those stories about how I resembled Grandma Emma, about my so-called birth, was it all such a giant lie? Margaret kept her usual stiff posture, but her eyes showed a panic I'd never seen before. I did what had to be done. Richard was shattered. He wasn't fit to raise a child. I gave you a better life. Better? My voice rose. You stole my story, my identity. You made me believe I belonged to a family that always treated me like an outsider. Sarah burst through the door, her wedding dress dramatically trailing on the floor. You're ruining my wedding. Couldn't you have waited to put on this little show another day? I turned to my supposed sister, anger bubbling inside me. Your wedding? Is that all you care about? I've just found out that my whole life was a lie, and you're worried about your perfect pictures. You were never really part of this family anyway, Sarah shot back cruelly. I always thought something was off about you, the way you never fit in, always being different. Different like Mia is different, you mean? The silence that followed was deafening. Now I see why you never accepted my daughter. Your prejudice goes way back. Margaret tried to step in, but I backed off. Anna dear, everything I did was out of love. You were so small, so defenseless. Love? I laughed bitterly. Love is what I feel for Mia. It's about accepting, protecting, being honest. You don't love me. You own me. I've become nothing but a trophy for your sick obsession. Don't talk like that about our mother, Sarah interjected. She's not my mother. The words burst out like an explosion. My mother was named Isabella. She died giving birth to me. Yet I'm sure she would have loved me in those 9 months more than you ever did in 35 years. Margaret slumped into an armchair, finally letting her mask of perfection drop. I couldn't have children, she confessed softly. When I saw you so small and Richard so lost, I convinced myself I was doing the right thing. Doing the right thing would have been helping Richard get through his grief, not stealing his daughter. I walked to the door, pausing for a moment. You didn't just steal my story, Margaret. You stole from Richard the chance to see his daughter's first steps. You robbed Isabella of a chance to have her memory live on through me. And now, seeing how you treat Mia, I realize you tried to steal my chance to be a different kind of mom. I left the office feeling both lighter and heavier. Lighter because I finally understood who I was, and heavier because of the weight of lies I'd carry forever. But there was one certainty. My true family was waiting for me in the library, and it was time to begin a new chapter. Richard told me about Isabella as we strolled through the gardens of the mansion that I now knew was my real childhood home. Mia was sleeping on the car seat, exhausted after everything that had happened. "Your mom was an architect," he began, pulling an old photo out of his wallet. "She designed this house. Every detail was planned for the family we hope to have." In the photo, a dark-haired, expressive-eyed woman smiles at the camera, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. I finally understood where my features came from. "Isabella was stubborn," Richard continued, his voice full of memories. "She insisted on working until the very last month of her pregnancy. She was even redesigning the baby's room, your room, when she went into premature labor. We sat on a stone bench, the same one where, according to him, Isabella used to sketch. She suffered a hemorrhage during childbirth. The doctors tried to save her, but..." His voice faltered. "Her last words were your name, Anna. She asked me to tell you about her, to teach you to be as strong as she was." Tears silently streamed down my face as Richard opened an old folder. "She left letters for you, one for each birthday up until your 10th. Margaret hid them along with all the other documents." With trembling hands, I opened the first letter. Isabella's delicate handwriting filled my vision. "My little Anna, today you turn 1. As I write this letter, you move inside me and I imagine what your smile will be like. Isabella was just like you," Richard continued as I absorbed my mother's words. "She too faced prejudice. Her parents never accepted that she'd choose a career over an arranged marriage. She ran away from home at 18, building her life from scratch. Something clicked inside me that day. My decision to adopt Mia, to face the world on my own, wasn't just mine. It echoed Isabella's strength. "Your room is still exactly how she left it," Richard said softly. "The walls are sky blue because she said it would be the color of your freedom. She was sure you'd be a girl, free to make your own choices." He showed me more photos. Isabella during her training, our wedding, her at different stages of pregnancy. In each image, her eyes shone with the same determination I saw in my own reflection. "When Margaret took you, she destroyed more than our family," Richard confessed. "She shattered Isabella's dream of having a daughter who grew up knowing she could be anything she wanted. But seeing you today with Mia, I realized that in some way, her spirit lives on in you." I looked at the car where my daughter slept, then at the house Isabella had designed. It was as if a circle had closed. I had finally found my place in the world simply by following my instincts, just as my biological mother would have done. "There's one more thing," Richard said, pulling out one last envelope. "Isabella left a design for a dollhouse she meant to build for you. Maybe Mia will want to help your grandpa build it now." At that moment, I understood that I hadn't lost a family. I'd found one that had always been mine, just waiting to be discovered. The following weeks were a wild roller coaster of emotions. Richard opened the doors of his house, our home, to Mia and me. At first it felt odd waking up in those huge rooms, walking through hallways where my biological mom had once dreamed of raising her family. The room Isabella designed for me remained untouched, like a time capsule of maternal love. Mia was enchanted by the ceiling, painted with stars that glowed in the dark. One night she asked, "Was Grandma Isabella magical?" as we admired the constellations. Richard completely transformed when he was with Mia. The powerful CEO turned into a doting grandpa who spent hours assembling the dollhouse Isabella had designed. Mia helped him, seriously and skillfully, just like I did as a child, as he recalled. "You've got the same determined frown as your mom when she's focused," Richard commented one day, as I reviewed some legal documents. We were suing Margaret for document forgery and kidnapping, not for revenge, but for justice, especially for Isabella. The discoveries kept coming. Richard showed me Isabella's diary, filled with sketches and notes about the daughter she dreamt of. There was an entire page dedicated to names with Anna circled several times and a note, so that she may be full of grace and love, just like her name. We found old photos in the attic, including one of Isabella, pregnant, sitting in the garden surrounded by architectural plants. She was redesigning the garden to include a tree house, Richard explained. She said every child needs a special place just for dreaming. Mia and I started our own ritual of sitting on the same garden bench where Isabella once worked. There, we would read the letters she left, and I would translate the parts where my mom shared her dreams for the granddaughter she'd never get to meet. "Mommy," Mia said one evening, "would Grandma Isabella have loved me even if I was different?" I hugged her tight, feeling the weight of her question. "Your Grandma Isabella fought her whole life for the right to be different, to make her own choices. She would have loved you exactly as you are." Richard even started learning Korean words with his granddaughter, turning dinner into mini language lessons. He hung Mia's drawings next to Isabella's visionary designs in his office, creating a gallery that blended the past with the present. The most amazing discovery was that Isabella had left an education fund, not just for me, but for any future grandchild. She wanted to ensure her descendants had the freedom she earned, Richard explained while showing me the documents. Somehow she knew we'd need it for Mia. Little by little, we built our own idea of family. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, moments when Isabella's absence loomed like a shadow, but it was real, founded on conscious choices and true love. In every smile from Mia, every story shared with Richard, every new discovery about Isabella, I found more pieces of the puzzle that was my identity. Our adjustment to this new life happened naturally, as if Isabella's house had been waiting for us all along. I transferred Mia to a nearby school where, for the first time, she wasn't the only Asian kid in the class. Her smile on that first day, making friends with a Korean girl, lit up my heart in ways I never imagined. Richard transformed Isabella's old studio into an art space for Mia. The white walls soon filled with colorful drawings, blending perfectly with the sketches my mom had left. "Isabella used to draw like that when she was little too," Richard remarked one day, while watching Mia work on her latest project. "I even started working with Richard at the company, not because he asked, but because I realized I carried Isabella's legacy in more than just my looks. My knack for design and visualizing spaces naturally led me to the architecture department. For the first time ever, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged." Our evenings became our special time. Richard would recount stories about Isabella over dinner, while Mia insisted on preparing Korean dishes she learned in her cooking classes. "Isabella would have loved this," Richard always said, tasting each new recipe with genuine excitement. She loved exploring different cultures. One particularly meaningful afternoon, we found a box of old videos. Seeing Isabella in motion and hearing her voice for the first time was overwhelming. She was 7 months pregnant, giving a tour of the newly built house. "And here," she said in the video, pointing to the garden, "we're going to build a space for family gatherings, because family is about creating memories together." Inspired by her vision, we decided to turn that very space into a family area. Mia helped choose the plants, insisting on including a few species native to Korea. Richard even hired a landscaper, though he made sure to stick to Isabella's original design as the base. Mia's room soon took on a life of its own, a perfect blend of her two cultures. Along with her K-pop posters, we hung photos of Isabella on the walls. "That way, you'll always have both your grandmas watching over you," I explained, and Mia responded with a tight hug. One morning I found Mia sitting at Isabella's old desk, flipping through her project diary. "Mama," she said thoughtfully, "can I be an architect like Grandma Isabella when I grow up?" In that moment, I felt 3 generations connected by an invisible thread of dreams and determination. Richard even started a tradition of Sunday lunches in the garden, where we'd read excerpts from Isabella's letters and share our own stories. Mia loved hearing how her grandma had gently broken the rules and captured hearts, especially when we discussed her choice to design houses instead of marrying young. "Your mom would be the most modern grandma in the world," Richard commented one day, as he watched Mia try to teach him about hashtags in his photos. "She always believed tradition mattered only when it brought us together, not when it tore us apart." The house Isabella designed finally became what she always dreamed of, a home overflowing with love, laughter, and most importantly, the freedom to be exactly who we are. The final showdown with Sarah happened when she showed up at our house after her honeymoon. I was furious that I had started legal proceedings against Margaret, claiming I was destroying a family. "What family, Sarah?" I asked calmly, as Mia played in the garden with Richard. The one built on lies, or the one that made me feel inferior for 35 years? You're being dramatic as usual, she retorted. Margaret gave you everything, a house, an education, love. Love? I interrupted. Tell me one time, just one time, when she showed genuine pride in me, not for the daughter she wanted me to be, but for who I really am. Sarah fell silent, her certainty wavering for the first time. Through the window, we could see Mia laughing as Richard spun around. Look at them, I said softly. This is family, unconditional acceptance, real joy, love without conditions or expectations. You can't just erase 35 years, she tried to argue, but her voice no longer held any truth. I'm not erasing anything. I'm choosing to move on. Margaret stole my identity, my story, my chance to know my mother through my father's memories. She robbed Richard of the chance to watch me grow up. I walked over to the shelf where we kept Isabella's albums. I found my true family, Sarah, not just through blood, but in the love Isabella left in every corner of this house, in the way Richard embraces Mia completely, in how I finally feel at peace with myself. Sarah glanced one last time at the garden, the scene of genuine happiness unfolding there. You're really not going back, are you? No, I replied firmly. Some bridges have to be burned so we can build stronger ones. She left without even saying goodbye, taking with her the last remnants of the life I once thought was mine. But contrary to what she expected, I didn't feel sad. For the first time ever, subscribe to the channel and hit like for more stories like this. Today marks 1 year since that wedding that changed everything. I'm sitting on the garden bench that Isabella loved, watching Mia and Richard put the finishing touches on the dollhouse. My daughter insisted on painting a small star mural on the ceiling of the main room, just like the one her grandma designed for me. Isabella's letters have become part of our nightly routine. Every word helps me understand who I am, and through her written dreams, I teach Mia that family is something we build with love, not defined solely by blood or appearances. The case against Margaret is over. She admitted her actions and is serving her sentence. I don't feel anger toward her anymore, just a distant sort of understanding. Her obsession with a perfect family blinded her to the fact that true perfection lies in the imperfections that make us unique. Richard has started smiling like in the old photos with Isabella. He says Mia restored the light he'd lost so long ago. Together we're creating new traditions. Friday dinners with Korean food, Sunday mornings drawing in the studio, and whole afternoons listening to stories about Isabella. On my 36th birthday, I opened the last letter my mom left. In it, Isabella wrote, "My Anna, wherever you are, remember that true love doesn't hold you back. It sets you free. Be free to create your own story." And that's exactly what we're doing. Creating our story, our family, our place in the world. A story that began with a lie, but found its way to the truth through the purest, most sincere love there is. Subscribe to the channel and hit like for more stories like this.